Art is inherently fucking stupid. It cannot teach you about the real world, only about yourself. It is to be viewed emotionally, intellectually, not actually intellectually. To chronologically list the flaws, failures, and fallacies of a film is to misunderstand the point. But to make a film this flawed and laden with failure and fallacies to invite misunderstanding. Sometimes, always, characters need to be slightly incapable in order to contrive sufficient and market-tested suspense. Sometimes, but not always, they need to be so dispossessed of object permanence, creativity, and general cognitive faculties that they might as well be fucking brain damaged. And the moral of the story is, if people were dumb, bad stuff had happened to them. A lesson none of us have ever once learned. One day, after just having his second child, John Office read a script that really spoke to him in his newfound circumstance. Touched within him his fears and hopes for family. He rewrote and declared himself director of said meaningful script to wild success. We open on a prologue that is in fact the middle of the story, day 89 of fine vintage. The world has been abandoned but for these shoeless hippies. They're wandering about town, allowing us to see that 89 days into an apocalypse, the only survivors would be photogenic. But how come for why they communicate silently? Well, frienderino bro guys, I'll tell you. Because the cursed road was not shutting the fuck up, and the real monster was people who didn't shut the fuck up. Yeah, that's right, John Office has got a few things to tell us, everybody. Specifically his family. As the marketing and premise made clear, there are carnivorous monsters with advanced auditory sensitivity stalking the earth now. So it's important you leave your children unattended in former population centers. Because as any parent will tell you, they're so good at shutting the fuck up. Also, if something is hypersensitive to sound, you've discovered its weakness. So, after nearly dying, they just let the kid wander around again, during which time he brings them the instrument of their death. So Daddy Office explains, noise bad. Frustrating that I continually have to explain this. They then leave them unattended again. And kid seems to think, well, yeah, but maybe noise ain't so bad? The family are just walking towards the title screen when their fucking idiot son decides to play them his demo and Hollywood eats him alive. Movie title. Time has passed. The film isn't convinced you get it yet, so here's a wall of exposition. And a second one. Among these condescending narrative devices is the most insulting of all possible whiteboards. What is the weakness? That is how you do biological field notes. Remember when famous scientist was all, but what is the weakness of this rare and newly discovered species? Is it AK-47? Yes, they haven't survived. But let's all draw our attention to this bit. Soundproofing. It's on the board. It really doesn't need to be because, obviously, but let's remember they made a fucking note. With that in mind, the family are just going about their day. Outside. We have learned nothing from the whiteboard and its infinite wisdom. You can't soundproof the outside, but you can apparently collect enough sand to create trails back into the city without arousing the monster's suspicion. Just walk in socks like the rest of us. It's a practice necessitated by it's too much effort to take the socks off. Pregnant, huh? It's just an unending cavalcade of dramatic contrivance. Or severely brain-damaged people so dispossessed of reason they take every conceivable opportunity to expose themselves to death. Or, you know, she thinks she can have a silent natural childbirth. Thumbs up on the video if you've had a silent natural childbirth, fellas. But if everything does go well and the child is somehow born without incident, these cretinous fuckwits do at least seem to be aware, especially in this family, that babies are the source of cacophony. So their plan is to gas the little fucker. Are you perhaps wondering how these people eat? Well, you shouldn't be, because here they are soundproofing a room. And here they are eating in not that room. Why? They are making specific efforts to eat only the softest produce, because when you crunch into an apple, that's a motherfucking sonic boom. But that would be of no consequence in the soundproof room that you were just soundproofing. Time to say grace, everybody. It's really important we thank God for doing this to us and hope that Satan's really got our back this time. Now for post-supper shenanigans. We're still learning about their day-to-day. Monopoly, but with quiet pieces, meticulous movements, and a fire lantern within elbowing range. Fire! Exclamation mark. Now you and I, we know that shouldn't have been there. And we'd have learned that in the first 5 minutes, let alone the year this has been going on. And maybe Protag knows that too, and he just hates his family and wants to die. But now that the fire is out and the lantern is off, the lighting situation in the room hasn't even changed. That lantern was exclusively there to burn the floor. That's not even a good policy to have pre-apocalypse. Dumb things can be fun. It's the flux capacitor, Marty! That's how come impossible premise! They don't take themselves particularly seriously. We don't take them particularly seriously. But the gravitas, the sincerity on John Office's face alone reminds me of the time when senators had to interview the Zuckertron about that them there internet he what done invented.
Could you, if could you, not would you do it, could you do it?
In theory.
Do you have the right to put my data, a name on my data, and share it with somebody?
I do not believe we have the right to do that.
Do you have the ability?
Senator, the data is in the system.
Far be it from me to side with the Zuckerbot, but Jesus Christ, that's the last wall of defense, is it? Yes, John, monster's bad, but I don't think you're quite qualified to handle the situation. What with your continued failure to handle the situation? As we are forced to continue watching a day in the life of these wannabe lumpy posers, I noticed two things. One, country music has survived the apocalypse again. And two, there is no story so far, it's just a slice of life. Fits very neatly between Watako ni koe wa muzukashi and the one where the girl is a can of coffee. You know the one. I've been working on my accent and that's no good. Watako ni koe wa muzukashi. Watashi wa gaijin desu. Nihongo o honashima. Anyway, he's replenishing the sand because he hasn't discovered socks. She's checking for a pulse because you forgot she was pregnant. Here's another reminder. Girl is walking like an idiot because the temptation to die is too great. She's also refusing to use a hearing aid. I have my dignity. Whoops, I've been killed. Now, some foreshadowing for what I consider the most offensive contrivance in the film. Whilst hauling this Hessian sack up the stairs, demonstrating that they are aware they have a soundproof basement, wife gets the bag caught on a loose nail. The location of this nail is in the middle of the step. The function of this nail is to stab you in the foot. It has no structural bearing on the step because it's in the middle and it's pointing up. You know what? During the course of cleaning the fine china, it felt like some of it was a shotgun that I loaded and cocked, but I don't feel the need to investigate further. If you are familiar with this film, you must be aware of its most glaring criticism. Why don't they live near the waterfall? The monsters are hugely inconsistent in terms of what motivates them vis-a-vis sound. It's also very not clear how it is they traverse the world. They're building a 3D image with their sound because they're definitely blind. So why don't the family just run a fucking generator? That's a pretty consistent noise. Anyway, time for some, and this is novel, dialogue. We're about to discover why there isn't very much of it in the film. Kid wants to know if John Office blames Deaf Girl for the prologue.
She blames herself.
As well she should. I can't ingest the scene, however, because I am suddenly distracted by the fact that John Office has product in his hair. Alright team, only the essentials when we roll into town. Food, medicine, Raid Shadow Legends, video essays on current media, and I wouldn't say no to some pomade if anybody finds it. And that leads me rather neatly to today's video sponsor. Food and medicine, which I'm sure, according to this family, would be Doritos and homeopathy.
It was no one's fault.
Next, he should look directly into the camera and tell me that this is a good film with excellent writing. Anyway, on their circuitous route home, our intrepid duo come across a very unsympathetic man at his most vulnerable. His wife has been graphically killed, seemingly by monsters, but also not because the body is there, uneaten. The only reason anything happens in this film is because it would be dramatic if it did. The old man can't contain himself and lets out an open casting call for plot. It arrives in the form of an obscured monster, and I don't know if you've ever put your hand over somebody's mouth, but it does not silence them as well as immediate proximity to death. Oh my goodness, remember how this idiot is pregnant? Well, the consequences of her actions are something not actually a theme in this film. The real monster was the Carpenters Union. And oh no, one of the carpenters has just let himself in due to the absence of an advanced warning system, such as a door. And he's proceeding to find so many code violations while wife is trying to remain inconspicuous and avoid the fine. She makes it to the bathtub where the carpenters have no jurisdiction when Kid sets off his fireworks and John Office gets the gun. Instead, he should have got his JBL Party Box 310. Welcome to Earth, motherfuckers! Anyway, the baby is born with the smallest possible number of jump scares. 2. And another child is left on their own to completely misinterpret the situation and contrive tension. But let's resolve that real quick with a little bit of slapstick. Next, naked artifice, as Deaf Girl's portable sound system somehow breaks the monster's brain.
Oh no! AM Talkback Radio! The worst of all possible frequencies!
There's a brief moment of the film trying to convince you that it's not the dumbest fucking thing ever committed to script.
You're saying they can't hear us.
Ah, yeah, you see, they didn't go in the soundproof room before because it was an experimental procedure not covered by their insurance. And they didn't think to try soundproofing in the previous year because of budget restraints, everybody. Come on!
Where are they?
That's right, characters in the movie are acknowledging the contrivance, thereby legitimizing the entire narrative device.
It's just contrived enough to work.
Who are we? If we can't protect them, who are we?
You're gorgeous Hollywood actors who'd be the first people dragged from their homes and eaten in an actual apocalypse. You're idiots. That right there is not how you want to do that in any circumstance. Least of all, when your life depends on silence. Anyway, the basement floods, because of course it does.
It's just contrived enough.
And one of the monsters goes under said water for some reason, and Mother's plan is to get into that water with the monster. Let's just chuck the movie in a ditch and say we finished watching it. Despite there being a baby making noise literal inches from its auditory senses, the monster gets distracted by the far-off sound of the silo breaking underneath the weight of kid or whatever. And the determined ferocity with which this monster takes off in pursuit of said sound makes it seem like these things need to eat every 45 minutes and they all should have died of starvation months ago. The environment continues to conspire against these people who apparently live here and didn't move in yesterday. So the children meet back up with John Office, and I can't help but feel their chances of survival have significantly diminished. Rather than return to the house because there's one of them fucking things around, John has his kids wait in the car while he faces off against it like a samurai. It doesn't even know where you are. Look, it ran straight past you in this shot. So he gets ham-boned, and the kid thinks this is an ideal time to practice his road rage. These fucking people, you've got one fucking rule, and this film is a cascade of demonstrations as to why you wouldn't be one of the survivors. To wit, Jonathan Office distracts the monster by dropping his American samurai sword, and then must have forgotten he just did that and does not pick it up and chuck it somewhere. Instead, electing to die. Threat evaded? Not even that much is accomplished. For when Hansel and Fuckwit make it home, they are followed by a monster. They can't even close the fucking door in this fucking family. It just walks in.
Contrived.
For ostensibly blind creatures, they are suspiciously good at navigating their surroundings and interstellar travel. Then we get this needless revelation. Of course, it was AM radio all along. Another idea born of circumstantial revelation, because we are not about to attribute cognitive reasoning to anyone in this fucking film, which seems to indicate it's not even a specific frequency. It's just feedback. And all that did was expose their weak, fleshy interior, something they do regularly anyway. So, you know, that would have been discovered by accident at the start of this invasion or whatever.
But never mind all that obvious detraction, because it's time for a tonal shift. I came here to cower from monsters and exhibit reckless incompetence. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
This is a bad story told reasonably well, but is it a bad movie? Success is no indication of quality. So I think, yeah, this is a fucking terrible movie. This is a bafflingly awful movie and everyone involved should be pushed into moving traffic. But that's generally the state of art. Broadly speaking, artists are motivated by pathos and not by reason. Art tends to reflect that. It is stupid, but it doesn't seem to know that. Thank God we're here, right team? To let it know what a fucking idiot it's being. We're a good friend.